Welcome to Decoding the Conflict Mindset. I'm Dr. Deborah Dupree, host and founder of the DCM podcast. My goal, my mission is to bring change and influence to millions of minds across the world to look at how they view conflict and what they can do about it. And today I'm excited to have Dr. Lucette Beall. Now, Dr. Beall brings to us a very important message about the incidence of suicide in the profession of veterinarians. Maybe you didn't know that. I didn't. But what Dr. Beall found through her own experience of being a veterinarian for many years and having gone through some very tough times is that she found a shift in mindset made a huge difference, and in a relatively short period of time. So you must stay tuned, listen, tell more people about it, and particularly if you know of anybody who has faced the challenge of suicidal ideation and possible attempts. This is something to listen to. She brings to us an extensive background, as I mentioned, as a veterinarian, but then also advanced training in psychology and understanding the human brain. And so join us. Coming up next, Dr. Lucette Beall. You won't want to miss it. She's got a free workshop coming up that will train you on how to retrain your brain. Well, again, welcome to Decoding the Conflict Mindset. I'm so excited to have you here today, Dr. Lucette. Your background is fascinating. Our listeners heard a little bit about your background before this, but the question I want to ask you is that what led to this transition from being a veterinarian for most of your professional life into the mindset work that you do today? Help us understand that.
So, it's life is interesting, right? So I owned my own practice for 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was owning my practice as a single doctor practitioner, right after, within days of my divorce, I was diagnosed with cancer. I didn't ask for child support. And so, because I felt it was better for my child, but I found myself in the situation of a self-employed professional with no paid days off, the only breadwinner for the family, facing 15 months of surgeries, chemotherapy, radiation, treatment. And it was like a huge wake-up call and a challenge not to just, collapse, but then that really wasn't an option. And so that's really where my mindset work started, was finding ways to not just survive that time period, but learn how to thrive.
Okay.
Because it was important to me to, live the very best that I could during that time period and grow during that time period. And I learned a tremendous amount. And then I stepped out of my business just a couple of years later, after my brother had suffered a traumatic brain injury, because he was in a situation where he was in desperate need of help, and I was the only one who could help him. But in order to do that, I couldn't go to work every day because I needed to bring him home, and he wasn't in a place where I could leave him and go to work. And in the process of that, I almost lost everything. And the challenges that came with that, and the struggle financially, I struggled for almost 3 years. And my banker told me not to do it. My parents didn't want me to do it, but I just could not leave him in that situation. And I learned, I reached a point where I had to make a decision. Was I willing to go bankrupt, or what was I going to do? And I made up my mind that I wasn't going to lose, 17 years worth of work in my business. And I started going back to the things that I'd learned when I went through cancer. And I started really focusing on changing my mindset, learning how to think differently, getting up every morning with a morning routine to get myself mentally in a place. And within 3 years of struggle, and within just a little less than a year, I had paid off hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and was almost out of debt. In another 9 months, I paid a cash down payment to buy my house. And I had sold the house that I owned to help my brother earlier in that struggle. And I really understood at that point, learned. I appreciate that 3 years so much because it was really clear that the tools that I learned, when applied, are life changing and that you can use them. And I ended up in a situation shortly after that where my parents were in not in good health, and I was the only one that could help them. And we were going into the pandemic, and I lost my mother in January of 2020. My dad, I had to put into a facility, memory care facility. I had their entire estate. They still lived on a ranch 2.5 hours away from me. The whole thing that
Wow.
unfolded. And when that was going on, I was telling myself, I am not going back down that road I've already been on. I am using all the tools that I've learned to think differently and to manage the challenges in a way that allows you to stay mentally healthy. Even when you have challenges, even when you have moments of grief or sadness, you are still able to function and find things to appreciate and live in a place where you're not drowning,
Yeah.
where you can still thrive every moment that you get the chance, and always be on your feet and always knowing that you're going to get to a better place. And those skills, that experience, and then those were overlapping. So during
Mhm.
2020 is also when I bought my house. And so as I moved forward and I went on to build a successful practice and sell it, the reason I sold it was because the calling to help others, the calling to give other people the opportunity to learn the skills that I'd learned became so strong. And people asking me for help and people reaching out for help and for coaching, and realizing that I could give that gift that I wished I'd had at the beginning of that, right?
Mhm.
And then I was able to apply it and go, yes, they work. This is
Mhm.
life changing. You can live in a way that is so freeing and strong, and so that you have resilience,
Mhm. Yeah. But
when you develop those skills.
yes, and so I developed a saying a while back, out of adversity comes opportunity, and out of
Yes.
moment pain comes the momentum for gain. And you are just the epitome of both of those phrases, because you've taken, adverse conditions and made it through them, but you also realize that it took a shift in your mindset. And
Yes.
so congratulations on all your successes in that direction. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you. I say now that every single challenge, no matter how difficult,
Mhm.
has an opportunity in it,
Mhm.
has an
Yeah.
opportunity in it. And we have to look for that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And in fact, I was just speaking with a coaching client this morning myself, and who's gone through some tough times and just recently got laid off. And yet he's developed a circle of friends out of the group that got laid off. And one of the friends had asked him to go to a job fair. And he's like, oh, I don't want to do that, And I said, think about it this way. Right now you're getting paid because you have a severance to find work, and you've made a new friend who's inviting you to go along to be supportive of each other, and look at you. Not only going to the job fair will expose you to what's really happening out there, but you'll be able to spend time with your newfound friend and maybe get a lunch out of it or something. Oh, I never thought about it like that. So it's really about reframing the picture. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. And I love that you use that word. That's one of my key words. Yes. Yes. It's about reversing the thought processes that we've learned. Many of us have
Mhm.
learned because we've been trained to think from the outside in, to live
Mhm.
from the outside in. And that's what creates not having resilience,
Right.
because you are buffeted around by events and people, and living from the inside out changes that and gives you that ability to know that you can handle anything and that nothing can take you down unless you allow it and
Right.
realize you're giving permission for it to take you down. And so you can take that control back. That's huge, huge difference. And we're not taught that, but we can learn it.
Absolutely, and it's key to being a mediator in navigating people through conflicts in their life, as well as traumatic events and so forth. And when I first used the word, my client said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And I said, "Well, it's taking a negative situation, that we, are not happy that's happened to us, but it did. And so, what can we learn from this? What can we gain from this? So one way to do that is, well, how can I turn this into a neutral?" or how can I turn this into a positive experience? And what can I gain from this? Or, okay, it happened and now I'm here. Okay, but you're at least not back there, So we practiced reframing in a lot of different ways. So he had practiced with that. So I want to ask you a question though, Dr. Lucette. I know that you were a veterinarian and you still are to some degree. One of the things you brought to my attention is that veterinarian medicine has one of the highest suicide rates among professionals. What kinds of factors? I was surprised by that, and I imagine many of our listeners hadn't even crossed their mind that that could be happening for vets. I mean, who doesn't love animals? But what are some of the stressors that go behind the scenes that vets deal with that would lead to suicide?
So there's a number of them, and there actually is an organization now called Not One More Vet, because that's how big of a thing it is. And it's
Wow.
geared towards trying to provide more resources and more awareness around the fact that our profession, both the veterinarians and the technicians, have a high suicide rate. Some say as much as 8 to 10% as higher than the everyday population.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things. There's really long hours and sometimes not good breaks, depending, like ER work, which I'm sure is the same in human medicine. It's called flexible, meaning you get to eat, but you don't know when, and you'll probably still be working and you won't have that space to walk away. And there's minimum 12-hour shift. I mean, I just recently worked a 16-hour shift because I overtime for a surgery. And, barely got to eat at some point because that's just how busy it was. And that takes a toll if you're doing that full time. And there is a lot of veterinarians are having to take records home at night or stay late and do records. So the hours are very long. The students are graduating with a really high debt now, and the debt ratio is high compared to what they can make as income. So there's a lot of stress there. And then what happens is they're also then, because they're graduating with high debt, sometimes ended up taking corporate jobs that maybe pay better. But then what they find in these corporate jobs is there's no mentors there. Like sometimes they have a high turnover rate. Young vets are going into these practices not ready to practice on their own without a mentor, and there's no mentor there. Then the stress becomes even higher. And because they're needing to see high volume, but they're not ready for that yet. And then veterinary profession as a whole, we don't have a whole lot of veterinary schools compared to the number of medical schools. And what that means is there's a lot of people applying, like 600, 900, over 1,000 applying for 100, 125 slots in a vet school.
Wow.
And so then what happens is there's a lot of good people that aren't getting in, obviously, that are very capable, but also you have people that have a perfectionism mindset, which if you know anything about that, there's less resilience in that mindset. There's more of that already of beating yourself up if you don't get things just right. And you're graduating a high number of people with that mindset because that's what it takes to actually get in vet school.
Wow.
And so then they already don't have the resilience, and they're going into jobs where it's difficult to have time to take care of themselves. And then the high, the expenses that go with the fact that it costs more, to go to vet school, the everything is more expensive, right? And a lot of clients have some financial stress. And so then when they can't take care of their pet or they can't do what they want from a financial standpoint, a lot of times then they blame it on the vet, who, whether they own a business or they don't, they can't, you can't stay in business if you're not running it like a business. So even if you're the owner, you're not in control of all the other expense factors that are causing the rise in the cost, right? And some of the less expensive places, then the quality of care is not there and they lose animals that way. And so then the client wants to blame the doctor. I mean, I just recently had a situation, even I just work a few shifts here and there because I still love veterinary medicine, and where a client was very angry, and it had nothing to do with anything that I did or didn't do. It had to do with the fact that I couldn't give them a big discount. I couldn't, and they couldn't afford what the animal needed, and they just took it out on me and what what he said to me and the names he called me. Now, I, at this point in my life, know that has nothing to do with me. And I did my best literally like a 12-minute conversation, trying to get him to a point where I could give him options, right? You could try this, or you could do that, or couldn't get there in the conversation. And so then you have to be able to have the boundaries to graciously say, when you're in a place where we could have a conversation, be happy to have a conversation with you. Otherwise, you're welcome to pick up your pet, because there's nothing else I can do.
Yeah.
But for somebody who's less experienced, or who doesn't necessarily have those, and I've been that person that, owned a practice and had people say things to me that were, it's tough. And then when they, there's cyberbullying, we see it in a lot of different businesses now, where people go on and post things and go on rants. But if you take it personally, if you're a perfectionist and you take it on as your fault, then that makes you more vulnerable to those. And you're not getting enough R&R and time with other people, and the wellness things that comes from not working too many hours, and to have the resilience to be able
So
to prove
I'm
that's
hearing
not
several.
you.
Yeah, I'm hearing several factors. Then is that one, there, certainly the competition factor getting into school, and then the financial factor of huge debt, and then also a lack of mentorship or role models to guide you through, and then critically long hours, so work-life balance is missing, and then you also have difficult customers who then make you the target of blame to sound out all their woes. So yeah, key factors. So I'm curious then, we emphasize the importance of mindset and the crucial role it plays in how we handle stress. And so what would you say are some practical mindset strategies that are applicable for veterinarians or professionals in general, that might have similar high stress levels that they can identify with those several factors I just summarized for you?
Yeah. So I think, it's critical to find ways to have more work-life balance, right? And so one of the things we have to start doing and teaching, I think I really want to start teaching with working with students, like in groups, like going to the schools, because I think we have to teach them early on how to say, I'm going to work this many hours a week. And if you want the records done, they've got to fit in that time period so that you can have some mental health balance, because that alone increases resilience tremendously, right? If we are able to care for ourselves and still get paid. So you have to be able to pay your student debt and still be able to pay your bills, right? And so I think there's some, and I think that where we are now with the shortage of veterinarians, there is more power to negotiate that, but we have to be aware that we can negotiate that, right? And aware that we don't have to work crazy hours and be forced to take home records in order to get paid. Or in some of the ways that the contracts are written, I think are things that we need to teach negotiation on, because if they're paid on a high percentage production, then they don't really get paid for vacation. And then they start not taking vacation because of the production. And then there starts to become burnout. And then that really sets you up for compassion fatigue, and for not being in the best place to handle clients like that, which then just exacerbates the experience that you have and what people say back, because you don't have those skills. I do think that we need to really, really start teaching skills that give people better boundaries. So how to know when it isn't you. And I think that really needs to start before they graduate, knowing that we are in the schools having a lot of the perfectionist mindset, because that really sets you up to not know where your boundaries are and allow people to cross them, or take it personal when people say things. It really isn't personal. It's about them, not you. I think that's really an important skill that without it, no matter what else we put in place, that's going to be a weakness that can definitely lead to burnout, suicide, leaving the profession, all of those things we need to address for the profession to thrive the way we want it to.
Yeah, well, very, very good. Yes. A lot of things, what I'm hearing too, this that ability to negotiate is really key. I just heard a story from somebody the other day who attempted to ask for more money at one point and was told no. And so she never, ever again asked for any kind of increase in pay. She just took whatever came her way. And then she learned that somebody much younger than her had been hired on and was actually earning much more money. And she was like, how did you do that? She was, well, I negotiated. Oh my gosh, I never, I was turned down once, and so I never went back again. And so that shows you how quickly we can become defeated if we, don't hold our own and demonstrate some boundaries ourselves, but also having the courage to do it. So the self-confidence. And so I heard that the importance then of teaching this in school, but what do we do with the veterinarians like yourself who've been around for a while and are feeling that burnout?
I definitely want to address that as well. And I would really love to, speak at conferences on that. I am currently writing a book, for that. I've two books going, but one is particularly for the veterinary, profession, and it will be called Working Like a Dog, going from overworked to overjoyed. So
I love it. Working like a dog. How perfectly relevant that is.
and of course, it really applies to many of us do that, right? That is not confined to the veterinary profession,
Right.
to long hours, not give ourselves a break, not give ourselves credit. One of the things I think that is so important to increase your resilience is actually something so simple. It's appreciation. And for me, we see articles on appreciation, how powerful appreciation is. But what we don't see, the third factor, so I like to say we want to appreciate others. We want to appreciate the good things that are going on in our lives. We also need to appreciate ourselves. And I believe in journaling appreciation, but that was one of the this is how I turned myself around. It was one of the key factors. And writing what I appreciated in myself helped me start hearing the negative voice that was actually holding me back from solutions. Because that negative self-talk has been there so long, and it's so much a part of many of us that we don't even realize it's there. And so you can't reframe what you don't realize you're even saying to yourself. And so it's one of the most, and I do have a reframe game too. That's why I was cracking up when you said that. But first, you've got to recognize what you need to reframe. And so much of what we're telling ourselves is what is allowing us. That's what I realized in that year that I turned everything around. When I started reframing things, recognizing what I was saying to myself, started to believe that there were solutions. And the reason I wasn't seeing the solutions is because I was overwhelmed and I was feeling guilty. And so in that place, I'm telling myself, all these things, I should have done this, I could have done that. And none of that things is relevant to moving forward to a solution. And I know for a fact I would not, if I had understood the skills that I now have, it wouldn't have taken me anywhere near 3 years. I could have done it from the start, right? But the value of those 3 years is I never have to go back there.
Yeah.
The tools I have, I understand, I know how to use them. But appreciation is a game changer because if you're in a job that you don't like and you're focused on what you don't like, you're going to find another job just like it if you don't change your mindset first, right? Mindset is the key to everything. So you look for things to appreciate in yourself and in everything around you. And from that, you'll start to see more things and you'll start to operate from a more positive space. To find a job that radiates positivity and is the place you want to land, you've got to be the person they want. You can't be the person they want if you're foundering in your misery and looking for another job. You're going to find another job that's very similar to the one in terms of what you're surrounded by and how you feel. So you have to change your mindset first. And when you develop those skills, you start to realize that, oh, I can control my life by controlling my mindset. And if I control my mindset, I can always find a solution. I can always land on my feet. Even when things get tough, they're never going to stay that way because I know how to believe and look for solutions, and I know that they will come, and I know that I can get out of anything, succeed anywhere. And that's really the gift I want to be able to give other people, is the tools to do that. whether they're veterinarians or not, right?
Yeah, yeah, yes. And so if I can add a word to your vocabulary around appreciation for our listeners to gravitate to, because I will oftentimes get sometimes a little pushback. So, well, how can I appreciate this horrible thing that happened to me, or how can I appreciate that person that said those terrible things to me? And so it's like, well, sometimes it's not always about appreciation. Sometimes it's simply acknowledging where you are or what's happened, and again, then shifting to say, okay, yes, this happened. Too many people will run and hide and pretend it never happened, or feel like they're stuck in their history. And
Yeah.
instead, you know what? Yeah, I can acknowledge that I had some pretty crappy things that happened to me while I was growing up or as I was going through my profession. And that does not need to define me. And
Right.
so by acknowledging, where we are and where we've come from, then that gives a lot of helps increase sort of the weight and insight that people can gain by saying, I have accomplished some things, and maybe it wasn't quite how I thought, but I have accomplished. Where were you
Right.
today versus where were you yesterday, and where do you want to go tomorrow? So, we all have a need for feeling appreciated. We all have a need to feel respected or valued, and we all have a need to be treated appropriately. And so combining all those factors then we can acknowledge, okay, is this situation working for me? Is this situation helping fulfill some of these things in addition to what I can bring to myself? And that's really, as I see the power that comes in with the mindset shift, then is that, okay, I can change these circumstances if I'm not feeling valued or appreciated or whatever, whether you're a veterinarian or whatever you are, and learning, having the courage to learn to walk away from situations that are not working for you, that are bringing
Yes.
you down and threatening your health and well-being.
Yes. Well, yes, and there you have a point in that sometimes you have to walk away to get yourself in that space for the next thing, and you have to
Yeah.
figure out how to do that budget wise. If depending on where you are, but sometimes you can do enough of a mindset change to find the good in there and use
Mhm.
that to drive you to the next place, knowing that you're going to leave, knowing you're never saying that looking for whatever good you can find in this situation means that you're going to accept it. Because some people say, well, if you do that, are you just going to stay? No, you have a goal, you have a focus, you're
Mhm.
going to choose to move forward, and you're finding ways to change your mindset so that you can find the solutions. The other thing
Mhm.
I like to say is everyone's doing the best they can with the tools and knowledge they have. And that best may be terrible.
Mhm.
Things that have happened to you in the past, things that people have done to you. And the reason I say that is because you really have to release them in one way, shape, or another. And that doesn't necessarily mean forgive them.
Right.
That's not, but it has to be some way that you no longer let them have power over you. Because as long as you still have a negative emotion
Mhm.
that you are living in, they have power over your life now in and what is continuing to unfold for you. And so you have to find some way, even if you say, as terrible that was, that's all they've got. Some of that comes from really realizing that most people, if they had a negative, significantly negative, like in your childhood impact, most likely they suffered as well, and they don't have the tools to
Mhm.
deal with it, and it came out in terrible ways to you. You now have the opportunity to take your power back and live a different life. You don't have to choose the trajectory that they did. And you
Mhm.
have to find some way to release them, right? So
Right.
that you're free to be empowered and live the life that you were born to get to live.
Right, right. I want to go back to something you said earlier, as far as that perfectionistic mindset, and really how damaging and lethal that can be for an individual in terms of always striving for perfect. And it's just like you're always setting goals that are unattainable, and when you are not reaching your goals, then that comes with it a whole sense of dissatisfaction and even depression.
And
Um,
failure.
and failure.
Even
Yes.
though you're not, you feel like it because you set
Yes.
goals that you can't meet.
Right. Right.
Yep,
Right.
been there,
Well,
done that.
I think we probably all, well, I will say we all have, but I certainly know I've been there and had to change that because I realized it wasn't working for me. I was
Yes.
unhappier than anything. But yeah, so definitely making changes and knowing that we can do that for ourselves. A lot of times people will say, well, they'll talk about how somebody else is creating the problems for them. It's like, well, the reality is though, is that we cannot change somebody else. Now we can influence change by how we change ourselves. So it
Yes.
starts here. What can I do differently to lead to a different outcome that then may have an effect on the other person, that they no longer keep going where they keep going. And they in
But we
turn,
have to realize that we're not responsible for anyone but ourselves. Because
right.
for me, one of my things that was so tough was I felt responsible for others. And I somehow felt that my worth was around somebody needing me, which actually attracted people who would just use you. Right.
Mhm.
And then it was a struggle because I felt like I had to make them happy to be happy, but I can't make anybody happy but me. And
Right.
so really that was one of the most powerful lessons that I learned after my divorce was
Yeah.
and through a process. It was not like a magic wand, right? And
Mhm.
understanding that. So I say I'm 100% responsible for myself, my choices, my actions, my emotions, but I have 0% responsibility for anybody else. Now,
Mhm.
that doesn't mean like I have responsibility for how I treat somebody and for recognizing if I said something out of line and owning every 100% of what is me.
Mhm.
But beyond that, I can't control anything else. And releasing that is huge for being
Mhm.
able to handle difficult people, be that clients, employees, bosses, situations, anywhere. Because I'm only responsible for me. I can't
Mhm.
control the other person. And it's
Well,
not my job to.
right, right, right. Yeah, you can only take responsibility for how you impact somebody else, but not
Yes.
they react to that. Yeah, yeah. Now I know that you've got two things going on here. When you have another book, or maybe that's the topic of what we're talking about: resilient minds, thriving in high stress professions through mindset mastery. Is that what people are going to get from your book, Working Like a Dog?
Yeah, it is actually.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so that definitely, where can they find your book?
Well, it's not out yet. So
Okay,
what I am going to provide a free workshop,
okay.
reverse,
Mhm.
reframe and rebuild. And
Yeah,
it's actually using some of the things that we've talked about to the tools to start to create that resilient mindset that allows you to have that mindset mastery.
great, great. Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to bring up is your new free workshop then. And so how do people access that, or is a link forthcoming on that?
Yeah, I'll make sure that we have the link, that you'll have the
Okay,
link. Hmm.
okay. So all of our listeners, watch for a new update as far as the link to
Well,
Dr. Lucette's free
we
work.
can pop it in the comments if you, yes,
We'll do
yes,
that. Yep, yep,
yes.
yeah. And of course, talking about mindset, you're a person after my own heart because I strongly believe that mindset is what produces change, and it's really about how we look at things. And so we can turn things around, and that's the joy I get in working with people as I do, and in coaching and counseling and mediation, and as far as helping them take a new trajectory by looking at things
It's
differently.
such a joy to see other people get it,
Yeah.
like to see that. And when I speak and I see people in the room, so I always try to tell stories that make it where it's an easy connect
Hmm.
because I love seeing the aha.
Yeah.
Oh, the eyes light up and it makes sense because then I know they have tools that they can take away. They can
Yep.
be life changing. And it doesn't
Mhm.
simple tools that can make a huge difference in our quality of life and who we get to be and how we get to get up and operate every morning.
Right, right. Yes, making small shifts here and there can really produce big outcomes. And so, Dr. Lisette, how do people reach you?
So I have a website, drlucette.net. So that's super easy. And also I am everywhere. I Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. And so I try to produce a lot of mindset different things as well. Little videos, short snippets, things, ways for people to get it in little bite-sized pieces is what I
Mhm.
like to say. It's like that aha moment, because that's the easiest way really to start changing is a little bit here and a little bit there, and then another aha moment.
Mhm. Well, wonderful. Well, Dr. Lisette, I'm so grateful to have you here on Decoding the Conflict Mindset, because you certainly have brought in a lot of valuable information, and particularly increased awareness to the challenges that veterinarians face, and not just veterinarians, but other professions that face similar challenges. And so glad to have a resource like you here. Thank you so much for being here today with me.
Thank you. It has been my pleasure. Absolutely. I love, love, love what you're doing as well. And it is just an absolute joy to be here today.
Thanks. Well, there you have it, folks. Dr. Lucette Beall, and all about mindset shift and resiliency. And so watch for her new book, Working Like a Dog, and also watch for new information about her free workshop coming up on how to retrain your brain. So Dr. Deborah Dupree, the Mindset Doc, and thank you for joining us on Decoding the Conflict Mindset. Well, I hope you gained valuable insight from Dr. Lucette Beall as she talked about the field of veterinarians, the high rate of suicide, and her new book coming out, Working Like a Dog, How Fit, right? And she also has a new workshop soon to be coming forth on retraining your brain. So again, I hope you gained valuable insight. Please let us know what you thought about this episode and put your comments in below. And I'm so excited to announce our next guest speaker, Dr. Claire Fowler. I had the great opportunity of working with Claire in a week-long training program, and it was amazing just, the synergy we had and the insights that she brought to the training, coming from a different perspective about conflict and dispute resolution. So Dr. Claire Fowler has her own doctorate in designing dispute resolution systems. So this is something you're going to want to mark on your calendar coming up. Don't miss it. Dr. Claire Fowler, she's an exciting individual. She's been with Mediate.com and is part of the online dispute resolution organization, serving as its executive vice president. And she too has a book called Rising Above Office Conflict, the lighthearted guide for the heavy-hearted employee. So again, Dr. Deborah Dupree, come back, join us, Decoding the Conflict Mindset.